Welcome to the Binge and Beat. It's my channel. This is where I sit back and I binge all the interesting shows and movies and stuff that my poor little brain can handle without exploding. First show that I'm reviewing on the channel officially is going to be Welcome to Derry. It's more like a recap. Spoiler alert, I do give spoilers. I'm going to run down the whole show. So if you ain't into that kind of thing, you know, this is fair warning, right? So I'll do a recap and then I kind of give my thoughts a little bit on the end of it. But I already reviewed episode 1. So if you're interested in that, I mean, y'all know how this works, you know what I'm saying? So then there's that, right? This is episode 2 of It's Welcome to Derry. It is streaming on HBO Max every Sunday night. This is episode 2, right? So episode 2 starts out. Now, in the first episode, I introduced all of the characters, so I won't go into a whole big old thing on that. If you know the characters, then you know the characters. But episode 2 opens up where... So when episode 1 ends, there's a sequence in the movie theater where Maddie originally disappeared at the top of episode 1. Some kind of way the kids all find their way back to that same movie theater because they're actually researching to see, kind of to trace his last steps, you know what I'm saying? And so Ronnie, the daughter of the owner that owns the movie theater, she lead them back and like, hey, this is where he was watching. This is the theater he was watching it in, and this is the movie he was watching. This is why you hearing that song in your drains. So when they open up episode 2, I thought it was dope that they opened it up, and this is showing you the whole ordeal directly from Lily's perspective, right? So it's showing you her perspective. She's sitting there, she's watching the thing, she's looking to the side, she's seeing the mean, ugly, evil demon baby thing that's flying around in the theater and shit that end up killing the kids. But then she wake up from a dream. Right, so that's her, I guess, her recalling that situation or kind of reliving it. When she wakes up from her dream, this is where we get introduced to the intro for the show. So, like, right, so now, like I said, you know, I didn't say it here, but I've said it in the previous video. I'm a TV kid, right? So my generation, we didn't have screens in the same way that kids have screens today, but we did have screens. We were the latchkey kids. You come home, you eat your snack, you do your homework, you pop it on TV, you probably watching Batman Begins or Animaniacs. You know, like we were TV kids, so I'm a TV person. So it'd be little shit that I find great pleasure in. Here's what I will say about the intro. I think that intro is so dope. So it's got like that weird 50s, 60s like pinup style, right? And so they show, you know, it's got the happy... It reminds me of like the pamphlets and shit you would see that would coach you on what to do in the event of a Cold War, right? So they got the smiling faces people, and then it kind of morphs into like terror and fear. I can't even really describe it. I think the best way to see that, you could probably, I'm sure somebody clipped the, I'm sure somebody has done that where they clip the intro from the show. I mean, can you do that? I know the copyright, people don't play around with the copyright shit. But anyway, it's a really dope intro. I really appreciate the intro. I appreciate the little song, the little girl with the ribbon in her hair. Like, it's cute. I like the intro. But so as Lily comes from her dream, that's the first time we get exposed to the intro for Welcome to Derry. After the intro is done playing, then we, you know, get back into the show. So it goes us to where the police are actually, there are 2 police officers that are sitting outside of where Ronnie and her daddy live. And like I said, they on his ass. Because now, not only did you have Maddie, who was last seen at your movie theater, he done disappeared, and ain't nobody seen him in 4 months. Now, we got an incident the night before last, or a couple of nights ago, where 4 more kids, 1, 2, 4, yeah. 4 more kids get attacked. Well, really 5. Ronnie got attacked too in her own way because she was locked in that room. But 3 of those kids end up dead, and Lily is the only survivor. When they found her, she was covered in blood. My dog won't leave me alone. So the police are all over Ronnie's dad. They really are suspecting that he got something to do with this and he's kind of behind it. And so now here's the other thing. I did mention too in episode 1, the racial tension. It's very slight. There's not like a whole big brouhaha about the racial divisions and the divide. Like it's not that kind of vibe. There is an undercurrent of racial tension. Just a small, just a little. It's prevalent enough for you to pick up on it, but it's not overt enough for it to be a real issue. I hope I'm explaining it right. But they're outside his house. He's under surveillance for good reason. I mean, I would be watching him too. You know what I'm saying? We know as watching the show, like he's not to blame for it. So it's just kind of sad to see it. You know what I'm saying? They go to where he's in the house. So from here is where it's revealed that Ronnie's dad, which I should really know his name. I feel like I wrote it down. It'll come up in my notes somewhere else. So there are 3 people in their household, right? So there's Ronnie, the little girl, her father, and then it appears he lives with his mother, right? So Ronnie lives with her daddy and her grandmother. They're having a discussion. Of course, grandma was not feeling it. You know, she pretty upset about the whole situation. And so they go into a whole conversation where I guess Ronnie is taken out of school, which seems legitimate to me. It's a pretty traumatic situation. Because for the kids that were there that night, well, I was going to say it's probably not as bad for them because they wasn't there when Maddie disappeared, but I think it was probably worse for them. It was probably worse for them, you know what I'm saying? But what I was getting at is that Ronnie this has been a prolonged experience for her, right? Maddie goes missing. Then they double back to try to get some idea of maybe what could have happened to him. And so not only do they not get any information, they get murdered. You know, Ronnie going through it. So she give that girl a week off from school. Let her stay up out of there for a little time. But Granny ain't trying to hear it. Granny wanted to take her ass on back to school because, you know, she just got to shake it off. You got to breathe and shake it off. And that is very generational. Like, that is how the older generations treat everything, I think. So I thought that was kind of sad. I was kind of pissed off for her. I'm thinking, like, this lady kind of a bitch. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, but you get to see the dynamic between the grandmother, who is the matriarch of the family. And so even though the father, what I will say too is that the father is very sensitive to his daughter, and he seems to want to coddle her for good reason. I don't think he would probably coddle her for nothing, but this seemed like a really decent reason to give your kid a little extra grace. And he seems like he's on board with that. But, you know, the matriarch, especially back then, like what the older person say, go. And so even though he's a grown middle-aged man, adult, you know, his mama telling him like she need to get her ass back in gear. And so he, you know, he's going to acquiesce to that because that's what his mama told him to do. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, we get an introduction to them. There are 2 new actors that show up, and one of them is Major's wife and his son. It's like they had to drive because Major's actually waiting for them on the porch. He tell her, I've been waiting out here 2 hours. What took you so long? So I guess they had to drive down from where they were from. I believe Louisiana comes up later on in the episode. They made some references to something that happened in Louisiana. So I guess that's where they're coming from. Anyway, so they get there. He shows them the house. They go in. You know, they miss each other and all that. The little son, he go up to his room. He got this big old, like, professional grade looking telescope. Like, I guess he's really into the sciences and all that kind of stuff. So he's excited. He go up in his room, and we just get introduction to the family. Another thing that stuck out to me about the wife is the minute she got there, she was uncomfortable. And it was slight, and she didn't make a grand deal out of it. I don't think that she even, at least the way it's portrayed in the show, she didn't really register being uncomfortable in a way that says, hey, I'm not comfortable. But you can tell by the way she's looking around and her senses, and there's a brief part where she's standing on her and the husband are standing inside. The son run in. Her and Major standing outside on the porch, and a white lady's walking her dog down the sidewalk, and she passed by, and she like kind of startled to see him standing there. And you know, the wife even make a reference to something like, are you sure we good here? You know what I'm saying? Like, you sure this is straight? And so he like, well, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, the president said we can be here, so we can be here. I don't want this video to be too long. Here's what I'll say about that. So the reason that stuck out to me is because, you know, there are some people that have spiritual senses that are a little more in tune with others. I don't want to go off into no tangent or no rabbit hole about this, but I will say that I'm pretty similar in situations like that, right? Some people can sense things, and this doesn't have to, I don't want to make this like super paranormal or nothing like that, or like get too far on the spiritual thing, but basically I see that trait in her. I see that trait in her, right? Without them saying it, and without it being like a big woo-woo, oh, she's, you know, performing rituals and doing, you know, all the things. She show up and she's just kind of like, I thought that was dope, and I'm pretty sure that's going to come back later on. So now we go to the scene where, Marge is getting in good with the cool girl. So remember, this is after the incident at the movie theater. I don't know how many days it's been. It's probably been a couple of days. But of course, everybody know about it, and Lily was involved, which is another shot to her reputation. We already know her as being the crazy kid that suffers some kind of major mental and emotional setbacks, like with her father dying and all that kind of stuff. So she's already got that going on. And then for her to be associated with this next thing where these 3 kids show up dead, it just like a good look, you know what I'm saying? So Marge, which I will say again, I think Marge really is a friend to her. I think she's genuine in wanting to be a friend to Lily, but Marge is driven by something totally different. More than wanting to be a friend to Lily, she's really concerned about being accepted and fitting in. That's her MO. Like, that is her priority. You know what I'm saying? And so they show that as, I guess, all this has happened, maybe Lily was out of school a couple days or something. I don't know. But whatever's going to happen in between the movie theater time and this particular school day, you see that Marge is getting in good with the girls. They call them the patty cakes. That is the corniest shit I ever heard in my life, but it's cute, I guess. But so Marge is getting in good with the patty cakes. And so there's a dynamic between her being so super desperate to fit in. I think the other couple girls, so it's 3 of them, including Marge, right? So you got the main girl, I forget her name, but she like the head bitch or whatever, the HBIC. And then you got the other 2 chicks that are kind of like along for the ride. And you got Marge trying to fit in. And so there's something in Marge that this girl, like the ringleader girl, she recognizes it, and I think it's off-putting to her. And at first I thought it was like the fact that Marge is so desperate. Maybe that's what's off-putting to her. But I think she sees something in Marge where those other girls really like her. And I don't think she appreciates that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think she appreciates the fact that the other girls are actually kind of warming up to Marge. So she tried to take little shots, and I just don't, you know, I mean, we all gotta have it. We gotta have that character for the show, you know what I'm saying? But it's just like, it's easy to not like this little girl, you know what I'm saying? I think the other important part to point out about the whole dynamic between the patty cakes and Marge is in that scene, they show very clearly like the tone of that friendship, right? So that friendship is very superficial because one of the little girls got a crush on some boy. I guess he was like Pissy Peter or some shit. I don't remember. But there's a guy that she's got a crush on, and she's like, oh, I got a crush. And they're like, oh, you got to tell us. And she's like, no, y'all gonna make fun of me. And they're like, no, we won't. And she's like, yeah, you will. And they're like, no, we won't. And so she tells them who it is, and then they start laughing. And so when they start laughing, Marge actually looks at her, and it's like a little glimmer of compassion, a little empathy in there. She's like, oh. But then in order for her to, you know, fit all the way in, she then kind of jumps in on the making fun of the little girl, you know what I'm saying, and making her feel bad. So I think that's an interesting dynamic, and that's just really probably setting us up for, I don't know, I feel like Marge's gonna be like some kind of boss, evil queen pin. I don't know where that could be going, but that's relevant, right? From there, we then go to where the wife, she decides to go out and explore her new town and her new surroundings. So she's driving her car, but she parked her car, and it looks like she's like what would be their downtown area. So it's like a lot of shops and people out, and they moving about and they shopping and stuff. And so she's walking through the town, and she see the people, and she's walking through there. This is an interesting scene too, because again, it is the scene with her walking through the town do a couple things. The main thing is it highlights her being out of place. But then you're charged with trying to figure out, why is she out of place? Is she out of place because of her race? Not really. Right? Not really. I think it's more that she is new to this little town. Right? But here's the thing. So the reason why I think that's relevant and why that's an interesting point and why they keep coming up in this show, because I really think they're trying to say something to address how you come into a situation. Like I said before in the other episode, I don't really think this is meant to have like a huge commentary on race relations. It might be. They may be tackling that in an indirect way. But I think it's being tastefully done, though. So I don't have no complaints with that. But I guess that's why it reminds me of Lovecraft Country, in the sense to where it is relevant. It is something that does come up and that you can't help but pay attention to. Case in point, right? So as she's walking through the town, she gets to the butcher. So this is where it becomes relevant. She goes to the butcher shop, and the butcher is like kind of looking at her like, oh, you know, how are you? You know, And she's a little combative, like, oh, you don't see our type around too much. And he's like, well, I mean, to be fair, like, I've been here for I don't know how many years, and you just look like a new face to me. And so I think that's relevant, right? That's relevant in the fact of where, you just a new face in the environment. And when you lead with, I don't know. I don't want to get into that because I don't want my commentary on a show to like take on any overtones of like political views and all that kind of shit. I personally don't give a damn about that kind of shit. I just don't care. She's having a pretty pleasant, back and forth with the butcher. She go in there to get her roast for the dinner, for them to eat dinner. And so as she's inside of the butcher, a fight breaks out on the corner directly across from where they're at, like at that intersection. Some teenage boys are out there fighting. So she stops, she looks out and she's like, oh, look at those boys fighting. And she asked him, she's like, well, why ain't anybody doing anything? And he was like, well, shit, boys gonna be boys. So basically we, just let them do what they do. So she stops and runs outside to break up the fight, which I thought was very peculiar. I don't know that I would do that. I don't know. I think maybe, I don't know. I guess it depends on the situation. And to be fair, they were kids. So maybe them being kids made her feel a little bit more prone to handling it that way. But you a new town, you are the black lady, and these ain't your children. Like, I just don't think I would have said nothing. Like, I probably been like, oh, that's bad. And then got in my car, got my roast and got my potatoes and shit and went on about my business. You know what I'm saying? But I digress. So she goes out there to stop the fight. So she stopped the fight and like everybody is kind of like, oh, what is she doing? You know what I'm saying? Like she's standing out now for obvious reasons. Like, cause everybody else is just kind of business as usual. Here's another thing that I found to be fascinating. As she's driving through the town, I guess the city council approved them to have a Paul Bunyan statue built. I know the name Paul Bunyan. I'm sure I had to like explain who he was maybe in 3rd grade and like took some kind of test or some quiz or some shit to prove I knew who he was. I will say though, since then I have forgotten that legend. I don't really remember the story. But Derry do not fuck with Paul Bunyan. Like they are not with the shit. So that pops up in this episode too. So she's driving through the town, she's getting ready to go. Dude is like, you get out of here or some shit, and he throws the thing as she's walking. I think she's walking at this point. And there's a truck full of teenage white boys that's driving by. And he like throws something out the car. And he's like, we don't want you here, or some shit. So again, it's one of those situations where they make it look like he could be talking to her, but he ain't talking to her. He talking to the Paul Bunyan monument thing that they get. Child. I really need to understand what. Matter of fact, I need to Google a couple things. I need to Google the cast members and their names. And I need to Google the Paul Bunyan legend. Like what? Why do people hate Paul Bunyan so bad? It's crazy. They have dinner. Mom wants to know how his day was. He like, oh, it's cool. Not a big deal. He don't want to talk about it. And then she's telling them about the fight and how nobody would do nothing. And so this is where they make that reference. I mentioned before, they make some kind of reference to Louisiana. And I guess something happened and she was like protesting or picketing or sat in or did some kind of civil rights work in Louisiana that ended up kind of making things a little turbulent for them there. So the father and her kind of going back and forth. And from what I gather, it was a pretty big deal because the son is so uncomfortable about even listening to it. He want to get excused from dinner. So he like, can I go? And so they let him go or whatever. And they continue to talk about it. Yeah, so I'd be interested to know exactly what that was. I will say this for the mama. I don't think I would have broke up that fight either. Only because, I don't know. I like to think of myself as pretty proactive, but I also understand the value in just minding your business. Like, you don't ever really know what people going through. And I know they kids and they fighting, but you don't know if he touched like their boy's little sister or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so many things. Like, I think the internet and the whole world could really stand to just mind your business. Like, if you don't know for a fact and you don't know the details, like, it may behoove you to just just mind your business. Like, just stay out of it. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think I would have tried to break up the fight either. Her husband is highly against it. And I think the son is like, here she go again, you know, from whatever happened before. So then there's that situation. But it seemed like they get okay about it a little bit later on. They do bicker a little bit. The husband and the wife, Major and his wife, do kind of bicker a little bit, but they get over it. So I think it ultimately, you know, kind of turned out okay. Then we get to Ronnie's fear experience. This is where because I don't know if you watch the first review for me for episode 1, I will be very honest, and I was like, you know, when I watched the first episode, I wasn't really that sold. I was like, it's okay. Like, they're gonna have to, it's a lot of weaving they're gonna have to do for this shit to make sense to me, for me to stay invested in watching it. I was not really sold on the first episode. I gotta be honest about that, right? But I think this is where I said, oh, I'm in. So Ronnie has her first fear experience. I can't remember what they're talking about or arguing about. Anyway, so there's something going on and she's upset. So she goes in her room and she gets under the covers in her bed. So she gets under the covers in her bed, and as she is under the covers, I think she was still for a minute, and then I think she had the urge to maybe remove the covers and to like sit up or something. But as she's trying to remove the blanket from her head, she's unable to. As she becomes unable to remove the blanket, her being under that blanket in this bed now starts to gather like fluid and liquid. And so basically, I guess the long story short is that the bed turns into a womb. So little Miss Ronnie finds herself stuck inside of a womb, like inside of a pregnant belly. You know what I'm saying? So she ends up clawing her way, and she ends up, I'm trying to think, did the bed spit her out, or did she crawl? I think she ended up clawing and pulling her way out. Or no, maybe it coughed her out. I can't remember the exacts about it. Anyway, she ends up getting spurted onto the floor one way or another, over by the door. And there is an umbilical cord connecting her to this bed. And she's wet, covered in blood and what I presume to be plasma or something. And then the bed begins to speak with her. The bed is upset about all the trouble that Ronnie seems to have caused it. And so the bed basically morphs into an apparition, I think, that is supposed to represent her mother. So that makes me wonder, like, did her mother die during childbirth or something? She seemed to blame Ronnie for what happened. We still don't really know exactly what happened, but if I'm using my common sense, I'm thinking it's something along those lines. So anyway, the bed basically blames Ronnie for everything that's getting ready to happen to her father. Blames her for the demise of her mother. And then it basically comes to life, right? And the way they did this, and so like I said before, I don't know if, I have said before in the first review, I'm not a huge fan of CGI unless it's like super tasteful or so subtle that I can't see it. Because I probably can't see it. If it's done right, I can't see it. If I can see it, not having the expert eye, then you've done a terrible job, and you probably shouldn't. You might have like one of them low B-rated, you know, which can sometimes be fun, I will say. Because I used to have a Full Moon Features membership, and I enjoyed a lot of those movies, I will say. The low budget horror movies with some of the stupid CGI. Anyway, I digress. Anyway, so back to the topic. So the topic is, this is where I said, okay, I'm finna rock out. I'm stuck with, for this season, I'm gonna do this shit for the season. Because the bed then begins to stand up, and the way they did it, like, it's just so genius. Like, there's like a headboard, and the arms are the headboard, and it lines up perfectly. And so, like, I'm like mesmerized by like the set designers and like all the people in the behind the scenes that pay attention to these little details that make the shit make sense. So that's what I mean when I say, like, even in something that's not necessarily real or based on fact, it still needs to weave together in a way that would make sense to your brain, so your brain can grasp it. And so the way they did this bed, I was like, oh, okay, that's what we doing in Derry? Okay. So yeah, so the bed come to life, scared the shit out of Ronnie. And basically blame her for her father getting ready to be like whatever is gonna happen to him. Basically, the threat is that he gonna end up going to jail and they're gonna fry him in the electric chair for murdering these kids, and that it's her fault. So, as one could imagine, that shook her up. That shook Ronnie up. After the bed sequence with Ronnie, we are then taken to like what looks to be like a local bar. And so the local bar got like this looks like somewhere where, excuse me, the military men and like the local law enforcement and like maybe some prominent people in the community, maybe they go to decompress, you know what I'm saying? Because like some kind of way all these types of folks end up in the same place. So you got 3 black airmen that are there, and then you've got the police chief. He come in to have him a drink. And then there are 2 other guys that are there. I'm not fully clear on who those dudes are because they were just wearing suits. But I do know they carry the kind of clout to where they got the police chief man shaking in his boots. And they basically like, hey, did you arrest that boy that owned that movie theater? And he like, no, I ain't been able to get nothing to stick. They're like, well, you need to get something to stick because if you don't, we're going to find somebody that do. Okay. Right. So they got the police chief dude kind of quaking in his boots. That's the kind of weight they carry. So as the black guys are sitting there talking, so these are the airmen that are in there. They're over there sitting there talking. One of them is the guy that I mentioned at the top of this, who I forgot. I don't know how I forgot to mention this in the first episode. Because the moment he show up, you can tell that from afar he is like, he has like this unspoken disdain for Major. Because Major come in, black man, you know, he got a little title, you know what I'm saying, got a little authority, you know, and you could tell from afar he's not feeling that shit. And I think that's an experience that everybody can relate to. You get somewhere and it's just that one person that for whatever reason, they already hate you. Like they don't know you. Maybe it's what you represent, or maybe you took the job they feel like they supposed to have, or whatever it is. He is the black guy to this other black guy situation. So he is there in the bar with the other 2 gentlemen on that evening. So they're talking about, the 3 guys in the bar are talking about how they were questioned and they shook them down and they was questioning them about this and questioning them about that and trying to make it feel like they knew they was guilty and this and that. Well, the guy who's the hater, he never had to answer no questions. According to him, they're like, oh, what they tell you? He was like, nah, they never questioned me. So I gather from that conversation, he actually carries a little more weight than what we realize he's carrying. Also, that is confirmed because he is the head of some sort of digging detail. Go figure. So he is, I guess he's got some sort of senses that tell them there in Derry where they need to dig. They looking for something. The way they've presented it up to this point, they looking for something. And he ain't found it yet. But he needs to get on his shit, because if he don't get on it, then they're gonna find somebody else to do it. So the guy definitely carries a little more authority than what we're led to believe from that first episode, especially with the way his reception to Major when Major show up is like, oh, maybe he's like the flunky, or like what's that man in Durango? The house butler, Samuel L. Jackson's character. I'm getting that from the first episode. Like, that's his position to the colonel, is what I'm getting. But as this episode unfolds, I'm realizing he a little higher than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he carry a little weight. So anyway, they end up making it back to the base that night. And just to reinforce how much weight he carries, apparently nobody was supposed to be, the base was on lockdown. But he got so much power to where when they get to the guard, to the gate, to the security gate, the guy that's there has to call in for approval, and then it's confirmed, oh yeah, this man, oh yeah, he good, let him through. So I'm like, okay, like, you the man, you know what I'm saying? So they let him in or whatever, him and his two cohorts that went out to drink with him that night. So now the next scene is where they're at school the next day. Marge and the plastics, not the that's Mean Girls. I mean the patty cakes. Marge and the patty cakes are at one table eating lunch. And I really think Marge wanted her to join them, but Lily, as she's carrying her tray, she ain't with shit. So she found her a little spot to sit by herself. And so they're sitting there, they're having lunch, they're talking about something stupid like nobody care about and shit. And so Ronnie comes in. Ronnie comes into the cafeteria. She's looking for Lily. She's pissed. And she basically charging Lily up like, yo, like, what did you tell these people about my father? They're going to take my dad to jail. You know what I'm saying? Basically, she's telling her about her fear experience, right? And she was telling her how the thing was telling her stuff. And so Lily is like, well, what did it tell you? And so Ronnie is like, hey, it told me that my dad going to end up going to jail and dying over this shit. You need to tell them the truth. So Lily's like, well, I could do that, but I don't really want to get sent back to the asylum. I guess apparently she had went to an asylum or something probably after her dad died. And she's really horrified by the idea of going back, which I get that, I think I understand that. But Ronnie is not trying to hear it because she feel like if she just tell them the truth, that her father can get exonerated from this and he won't end up suffering some kind of, jail sentence or prison or worse, death penalty or something. And Lily is like, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Because they're not going to, like, I can't do that. They're not going to believe me and they're going to think I'm crazy and I can't go back to that place. And so they get into it. Well, Ronnie throws a fit and she says bullshit out loud, real loud, where people can hear. So basically she gets in trouble for screaming the word bullshit out where everybody can hear it. So we know the scene ends there where she's in trouble. Now it goes to where the son, this is another day, the son is in the hallway. Major's son is in the hallway eating his lunch on the floor. Well, now he's reading a book on the floor. And it's another little boy out there in the hallway eating his lunch. So I guess they eating out there because they don't want to be in the cafeteria with all the people and shit. And so this really kind of sets up how they meet. But really what this is setting up is because Lou, as he's sitting there talking to the other guy across the hallway, somebody run through and they throw a stink bomb, right? So I guess because he get the stink bomb, he jumps up and runs. When he runs, he end up crashing into the teacher that was the bitch from the get-go. He ended up running into her and she fall on the ground. So that sets it up to where now he's in detention. So two things, the cussing in the cafeteria and the stink bomb. So I guess apparently anybody can smell a stink bomb, but he's running. So that implicates him as being guilty of the one with stink bomb. So him and Ronnie end up in detention together. It's a really cute scene. It really just kind of set them up for meeting each other. So there's nothing real relevant. What is relevant in this scene to me, I think, is their perspectives, right? So one thing is, I think Ronnie is not used to seeing a boy who is, especially a black boy, who is genuinely and voluntarily interested in science the way he is, because he's sitting there reading a book, the 1,000 Ways of, I forgot the name of the book, but he's reading a book basically with scientific stuff and that's telling him about planets and shit. And so she like, you couldn't possibly like that for real. So he give her an example as to why he like it for real. And basically he says something to the effect of like, the stink bomb that they threw in the hallway got all these different chemicals, but what we know is that those particular chemicals actually surround Venus and another planet he listed. And he was like, so, I could say I'm covered in chemicals, but maybe I'm covered in stardust. Okay. And I'm like, what, boy, whatever. That was really cute. I thought that was cute. That had moved me a little bit. I thought that was adorable. So, whatever. But as they're in detention, they actually get to see Lily being escorted off the campus by the police. So that's relevant because what happens now is that the police, remember the police chief is under this pressure to make shit pop for the movie theater owner. So he decides he's going to question Lily again one more time. And so Lily is she's honest in the sense where the dad did not have anything to do with that. He wasn't there. He did not do it. She knows it was not him, but she don't know what happened. She's pretty adamant about sticking to her story. And I will say, to be fair, she did do that, right? She did do that. But then the police chief, a lot of what they do is he ended up changing the question to where she couldn't unequivocally confirm that he wasn't there. So that's all he needed. That was enough that he needed where he could go arrest Ronnie's daddy. Now, Major decides to go in and confront the guy that is accused of attacking him with his friends. And so basically he just let him know, like, I know you didn't do that shit. You know what I'm saying? I don't know who did it, but I know you didn't do it. And I want to know why he just seemed like he want to know, why would you admit to doing this if you didn't do it? Long story short with that, let me fast forward that one, because I think that could drag out too long. I'm not really sure why they broke that up the way they did. But anyway, I can't skip this. This is the very important part of it. So here's the thing. So the major does go to the colonel and says, hey, colonel, this is bullshit. I know it's bullshit, and here's how I can tell you it was bullshit, because that dude couldn't handle a gun or whatever. So colonel is like, okay, well, give me a couple minutes to explain why. I'm going to tell you why this will make sense in a minute. Now, here's the thing. The next scene shows Lily. I guess she did her talking to the chief or whatever. She's done with that. So it looks like her mother sends her out on a store run. So she gets to go to the grocery store and gather them some groceries. As she's in the store, I knew, well, anybody watching the show probably know it, but I knew when she walked in the store, it was giving me back rooms, infinite shopping aisle, like you never go escape ever again type vibe. When she walked in there, I'm like, okay, here we go, right? So she gets in there, and the way this is set up, this one, her fear experience, this was Lily's fear experience, right? So her fear experience was interesting in the fact where, like, I'm always really moved by Skull. I personally, and I'll get into this one day probably as I'm reviewing horror movies, I'm a really big fan of horror movies. I'm a really big fan of gore. I know that does not sound the greatest coming from a woman. However, it is what it is, right? So I can appreciate a good decapitation or, a good stabbing or, like in a movie context anyway, like I can appreciate that type of thing, right? However, what I will say is that what I can appreciate even more is when somebody can scare the shit out of you and there is no blood or there aren't really any fluids in a way that would indicate that somebody's been injured. Hold that thought, right? So Lily gets into the shopping, the grocery store, and she's shopping for some groceries. She got her little list. She's pushing her way through the little aisle. She keep going down these aisles, She get a couple things she need. She's still looking for the stuff. She make a couple lefts, a couple of rights. And then each time she turns and goes out an aisle, somebody is there, and then they just stop and they look at her. The creepy one is the lady. So this is when you know shit is about to pop off, because there's a lady, kind of slightly elderly lady standing there. And as Lily passes, the lady turns her head and looks at her, and then she tilts her head. I'm like, okay, here we go, right? Here we go. So eventually she goes through, a couple people look at her, they're looking at her weird or whatever. So she's running, and she get blocked into an aisle where she's not able to get out, and she's not able to get out this way. She came back out. So basically this aisle, this shopping store aisle has closed in on her. And where would she be? She is stuck on the aisle with all the pickles. Stuck on the aisle with all the pickles. So her fear experience is, it's interesting. Basically, for Lily, her fear experience is her dad. As it was explained in the first episode, which I probably should have mentioned before now, but when she was talking to Maddie, and Maddie was asking her what happened to her father, she explained to him that he actually fell into, I guess, some kind of machine that they use, some kind of, I don't know how folks process pickles, but there was some sort of machine, and he ended up getting caught in the gears or something, and so he's basically sounded like he was like grinded or crushed to death. Super traumatic if you a kid. I can see how that would really torment a child. And so that's relevant because now when you see him in the pickle jar, it makes sense. The other thing was that there was a rumor that pieces of him were distributed in pickle jars throughout the I think they in Maine. What state they in? Whatever state they're in. The rumor is that he was ground up so bad to where there's pieces of him that was still contained in some of the pickle jars that had been sent out. But that's just a rumor, right? However, the fear experience takes advantage of that being in the back of her mind, right? Because they show her father in the face in one of the pickle jars wanting to give her a kiss. And so it's just really, really well done. It's really well done. It's well done in a way that a person like me who don't really get into the CGI shit, I could really appreciate the way they did this, because he's there, his face is there, And then as she's backing up, there are other pickle jars behind her where you start to see his hands and his limbs start to generate in other jars. And I'm like, okay, I see you. Like they did that. You know what I'm saying? Like they did that. And then as she gets a little more excited, she grabs a pickle jar with his head in it and she slams it on the ground. She like, nah, I don't want no kids. She's upset, so she's just reacting. So when she smashes it on the ground, the other pickle jars start to fall, and these mounds of flesh like fuse together, and he's like slithering across the floor. Like I'm like, yo, I'll just say I'm in. Like this is what I do when I'm watching. I really, really appreciate that sequence, like in its entirety. You know what I'm saying? Like I thought that was super dope. And so it's a fear experience. So it's happening, but not really happening. As she finally wigs out, she's getting back into the corner. She freaks out. The thing, like at one point, wrap around her neck and shit. She starts screaming. And then the manager to the store, I guess he the manager to the store, he walks up and he's like, hey, Lily, what the hell wrong with you? You know, so she snaps back to reality. Now she's sitting on the floor. All these people are gathered around. She's looking up like, what? And there's a shattered pickle jar in front of her. And so that instance was enough for her to then be shipped to Juniper Hill is their asylum. I guess it's their local asylum where they send all the crazy. So now that incident is what prompted her being sent up to Juniper Hill. Yeah. These kids going through it, man. Like, god damn. So anyway, yeah. So then now, you know, Colonel gets to tell Major, okay, so yeah, we set you up. We wanted to put you in a position where we want to know what would happen because we're on a top secret mission. What's the top secret? It's called Operation Preset. I wrote that down. Yeah. So anyway, he explains Operation Preset, and basically they're looking for some sort of, there's some kind of beacon that's underground, or there's some kind of thing underground in Derry that they've been told is there, and they're looking for the beacons that are used to control the thing. They're conscious of the fact that the thing is what controls fear, and they are wanting to weaponize this because remember, this is a Cold War, so they're looking for different shit they can use to outwit the opponent. Like, I guess in this case it would be the Russians, you know what I'm saying? So as he's walking him through and kind of explaining to him the background and how it came up and what the mission is and how, you know, we need you. Once we find this thing, you so cold on the plains that we gonna need you to get us there. We trying to locate it, but when we locate it, we gonna need you to help us get there and get that thing up out of there, right? So that's the purpose in them wanting him to be involved. As they're having their discussion, remember now we got the other guy, Hanlon and Halloran. Their names are so similar. I wonder if they related. Maybe that'll pop up later in the show. Anyway, the other guy, the black guy that don't like Major when he shows up, basically him and his commander, I don't know what you call these people, like his boss, him and his boss man, they bust in the room, in the control room where Colonel is talking to Major at, and they're like, yo, we found something, we need you to see it. So they end up going back to one of the dig sites, and they have exhumed a car. Now remember, this takes place in the 60s, but that car is like one of them 1920s, you know, Bonnie and Clyde, you know, mobster, south side of Chicago looking ass cars, like in like the buggy looking cars. So they've exhumed this car that was underground. So as they're pulling it up, it's filled with mud and dirt and, you know, water and all kind of shit. Well, the doors swing open on it, and it's full of decomposing bodies. I think they were children bodies too, if I'm not mistaken. I couldn't see it that well, but I think they were children bodies. So that leaves us to the end. That's the end of episode 2 of It. Welcome to Derry. My takeaways on this episode, I've already said it a couple times throughout. This episode is where I was like, and I'm surprised that it actually happened this early. Because I have actually, to be honest, I have sat through some seasons of some shows where it's been, I'm an American Horror Story fan. I've been watching American Horror Story since its onset in 2011. When was Murder House? I don't know, but I've been rocking with them since season 1. I have watched every single season, every single episode. And I I'm bringing that up because I'm not opposed to the idea of watching a show, 2 or 3 episodes until it really be like, oh, here we go, So I'm surprised that it got here this soon for me in episode 2. But episode 2, because episode 1 left off and I just was like, I don't know. This don't make no sense. Episode 2 kind of reeled me in a little bit more. So I will say that I am committed to completing the season. And I'm just really, I want to definitely see, again, I'm really surprised by how much. I'm wondering, does Lovecraft Country and this show share producers or directors or something in common? I'm gonna have to research and look into that too, because there are some different things in this show that really, really make me want to rewatch Lovecraft Country. I was a fan of that season. I know a lot of people was like, "What?" But I loved Lovecraft Country. And so far, I'm really into the Derry. Episode 2. I'm really interested now to see. I just want to see where it's going to go. I don't even really know what else to break down. I think that episode 2 reeled me in. I thought it was really cool how they give you just enough to where you got to keep watching, which I guess that's the beauty in any show. What's the point in the show if that's not going to be a part of it? But I think it's tastefully done. I think what I'm also hoping as well is I am hoping, I just don't know if it's going to be possible. It's going to probably have to always be some casualties of war. But I'm hoping that Ronnie's daddy can get out of this shit. I'm also hoping to find out very soon why it killed all the boys and the little girl and didn't kill Lily, right? So what with this thing determines whether you are or not susceptible to its powers. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I ain't never read the books, y'all. So some of y'all that's done read the books, you might already know. But I don't know, and this needs to come together and make sense. So that is my takeaway and my breakdown of Welcome to Derry, episode 2. I love this shit, man. So that's all I got for now. I will see y'all again very soon with episode 3. Look for that coming very soon. Until next time, I'll see y'all later.